Hey guys, 707 here today. How you guys doing? It's been a long time. It's kind of due. Fortunately, I had a lot of stuff come up in the last couple of weeks. I had one of my good buddies end up moving in, and we ended up getting another dog, so we've been spending a whole lot of time with her lately and trying to get her all house trained and whatnot. I also got a good buddy of mine. Like I said, he moved in. You know, he kind of fell on some rough times, but he ain't going anywhere anytime soon. But today, between him and I, we're actually going to be doing a video for you today for a 2012 Chevy Silverado, 5.3 liter. In the VIN number, the 8th digit should be a 7, and that should be the exact same motor I got in mine. Now, in today's video, you're only going to need a couple things. Should be really simple. One thing you're going to need, something to get the filter off. I prefer these. They're a lot easier to use. You'll see why it's still not easy when we get down there. The other thing you're going to need is a 15mm wrench. The one I happen to use, it's ratcheting, just makes life go so much easier. Of course, you're going to need your oil and your filter. Oils I always use, don't use anything other than Mobil 1, of course, and the only other one I use is Castrol. Both of them are always full synthetic. No two ways about it. But everything else, we're just going to see what happens. The only other big tool you're actually going to need is one of these jammies. Doesn't have to be this exact one. This one came from Walmart. All it is just an oil pan catcher. So that way when you drain it out, you got something to put it in. The only issue that a lot of people seem to have is the container isn't big enough. Now I've used buckets. I've used anything to catch it with. Your best option would be to actually drain it into preferably the bottle you used with the new stuff afterwards, which I would suggest using a funnel for, excuse me. But in this case, this is a 16 quart jug. So when I'm done with this oil change, I shouldn't have to empty it right away. But I also have a 55-gallon drum that I usually empty it in. So with that being said, I'm going to introduce you guys to a buddy of mine and the newest addition of fur babies to the house. Here's my buddy Itzy.
Hey guys, how you guys doing today? Welcome to the channel.
And here's Hazel. She is the most offensive teddy bear on the planet. That's really about the best way I can explain it. She'll be 6 years old on the 2nd, and she is a very good girl, very affectionate, and she doesn't know when enough is enough when it comes to mauling me with affection. But all in all, she's a good girl. So I'm going to show you a couple things, little tips and tricks and stuff that I've come through, in the professional industry. And one of those tips and tricks, since you guys know that my truck's lifted, unfortunately it's not simple as just reaching under the hood anymore. So one of the tricks that you guys can do to help circulate it out anyway is find your oil cap. All you got to do, pop the cap off. That's it. And just to help you out, just that little extra, find your oil dipstick and pop that out too. All that does is it just allows airflow to go in there, so when you pull the drain plug, it drains out just that little bit faster. I would highly suggest not doing this when it is, I don't know, been running for an hour, or I don't know, started at all. I would definitely suggest trying to do this after it's been sitting for like at least an hour to cool everything off. Otherwise, you can get burned with the oil if it's that hot. So we're going to hop underneath the truck, and I'm going to show you guys exactly what we're looking at. Alright guys, so now we're under the truck, and your first thing, take a look at everything. See if you see any fluid leaks, which in this case, I am leaking a little bit of oil. I am a little overdue on an oil change. For some reason, this truck just loves to start leaking when I'm overdue for an oil change. But the first thing you want to check is you want to find your drain plug, which on this vehicle is right on the side of the drain plug, or the oil pan itself. This is the oil drain plug for it. So take your 15mm wrench, slap it on there real quick. And see if you can crack it loose. Okay, let me get it loose and I'll be back with you. Alright guys, so I got it open. Move your oil pan over. You know, you want to start doing this a little slow at first, unless you know exactly where it's going to project out at first, especially with this being cold. It is not going to shoot out as far as it would when it's hot. So take your drain plug and pull it out by hand. And if I'm really lucky, I can do this without getting oil all over my hand. There she goes. And then you just let it drain into the oil pan, and when it starts slowing down, you may have to move the oil pan over a little bit just to be able to catch if it's dripping out or anything else like that. But as we can see, guys, we were very, very overdue on an oil change. It is very, very dark. That's normal. Usually within the first 2 weeks of motor oil in a vehicle, it will instantly start changing colors. Sometimes nicely, sometimes not so nicely. In terms of, it may just go to a darker golden color if it is like a newer car or a newer engine or a healthy engine. If it goes really dark really quickly, that's usually a good indication that you have a lot of carbon deposits inside your motor. And at that point, I would actually highly suggest to do some kind of fuel cleaning treatment system inside it, to see if you can get any of that stuff out. And stuff I would recommend for that personally is actually a bottle of seafoam. That stuff seems to work really well, and I have never had a problem with it. They do have special stuff that's not just seafoam, but it is also not just seafoam, but it's also a high mileage seafoam for any cars that are, you know, up there in miles. And like I said before in one of my other videos, high mileage in my book is pretty much anything like 130 and over. Would be a good time to start using high mileage specific stuff. But every vehicle is different. So now that this is pretty much almost done draining, what we're gonna do, since I would happen to be lucky enough and the drain plug came out without sitting in the oil, which is pretty nice. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to actually twist it in by hand again to get it feed all the way up in and fully seated as much as I can by hand. And then you grab your 15 again, stick it on there, and just give it a little snug. You ain't got to kill it. If you over tighten it, you can take a lot of chances of stripping out the threads inside your pan, which in return will actually end up in pretty much replacing your oil pan. Or if the drain plug is not in real good shape and you over tighten it, you can actually strip the drain plug, which is fairly easy to replace as long as it comes back out. Again, if it doesn't come back out, you're pretty much in the same situation all over again of pretty much replacing the oil pan. So what I'm going to show you now is actually on this side where the oil filter would be. So as you can see, last time I did use a Mobile One. Unfortunately, I don't have any of those right now, so I am using a different brand this time. But that's okay, we can work with it. And as you can tell, it is so far into this oil pan, it's actually quite a pain. So I'm actually going to have my buddy Itzy come down, and I'm actually going to have him record this session so I could just have two hands on doing this job so I don't get covered in oil. Alright. Wow, that was not as tight as it normally is. That's kind of concerning. And it's already leaking oil. And I could barely get it to move. Oh, there she goes. Look at that. Now, recommendations, so you don't get absolutely covered in it. You know, kind of sort of like that. Let it drain out a little bit, and when it starts really slowing down on it, then pull it off. At this point, I would definitely highly suggest that you would grab a rag, you know, for just simple reasons. Anything you do with any kind of fluid, you should have something to clean it up with, car relating and yourself, of course. But it actually slowed down pretty quick, probably because it's really thick. So we're just going to take this and continue spinning it. Which, by the way, I hate this style of filter. This is one of the only big complaints I have about GM when they decided to make this engine, is they didn't put it in a spot where it's actually easy to do oil changes. But that's just little stuff, though, compared to anything else. Hazel's trying to lick oil.
No.
So there's the filter. Pop that jammy off, flip it right up in there, just let it drain out. As you can tell, this is where the rag would come in handy. Which I probably should have grabbed one of those, but that's okay. I still have a right hand. Plus, it's my truck anyway. Okay. So, this is the new oil filter. It's an old one. It's not really a reputable filter, but honestly, I really don't drive the truck that often, so this will do for now. Regardless, I still do it by time, although I don't drive it as much as I should. But these filters have also never really given me any personal issues, so this is what I'm going to be using today, and probably for the next couple oil changes. So you take this, you stick it in there, and you can twist it on. Some of these filters, if you wanted to, just to verify seating potential, you can always put some little bit of oil on the gasket itself, just to make sure that it has a really good seat with it. That little bit of oil residue doesn't bother me. My truck's high enough. If it's spraying off, it's just going to hit the underside of the truck anyway. I'm not too worried about it, because eventually I will have a video about undercoating on my truck, which I will make, like I said, I'll make a video on that. But at this point, you would definitely check, and make sure you got all the oil off if this was for somebody else's car, or even your own. Again, I'm not entirely too worried about my truck. And the only other thing that you'd want to check prior to putting on this filter is you want to check the housing up here where it actually seats onto, to check to see whether or not if the old oil filter gasket actually came off. Or if you grab the old filter, there's a little piece of rubber right there. This is what you would be looking for. If this did not come off with the oil filter, and if it's still attached to the housing. If it is still attached to the housing, and you decide to put the filter on anyway, you are going to know immediately. Why? Because as soon as you start it and there's oil pressure in it, it will start spewing oil everywhere. That'll be your first indication somewhere you screwed up. All right, guys. Now that we're out from underneath the truck, by the way, cold oil doesn't always make your hands white again. Just letting you know. But now that we got the drain plug in and it's tight, we got the oil filter on and tight, what we're going to do is we're actually going to start putting some motor oil in it. Again, I enjoy Mobil 1. My truck takes 530 full synthetic. That's all I have ever put into it. That's all that the manufacturer recommends for it. So in this situation, some people could use a funnel if you have very bad depth perception. I'm actually going to try to fill it without a funnel, and we're going to see where that goes. So either one of two things are going to happen. If I make it, great. If I don't, it's going to drip on the floor, and then when I start it, it may start smoking, but it's nothing to be worried about. It will smoke off, and it's not going to hurt the motor. Now, with these 5.3 liter motors, and something I should have said in the beginning, is these engines with the V8s in them take six quarts of motor oil. So I actually have two big containers. One was already used about halfway, so I only have to put about a quart into it. And then I have this other big jug here that the whole thing will be going into. So I'm going to have my buddy record this because I'm definitely going to need two hands. I love this fresh sound of a cracked cap. On today's episode of I'm about to make a freaking mess and I can see it now. I would come up on the side here. Alright, so I only dripped a little bit. That's not too bad. Alright, I'm dripping a little more. And I'm dripping a little more. This is what some people would call the waterfall technique. Does it always work? Nope, as you can tell. But it saves a funnel if you can do it. Some people aren't able to do it. That's quite alright. Fortunately, oh shit, I just dumped fucking motor oil all over the fucking thing. But if you can do it, that's great. It'll save you a funnel, save you a trip. For some people, it may save you some money. But this whole thing will get poured right into the motor.
All right, everybody, we're gonna go to the second amount.
Now, this is gonna be fun because I only need a quart. So I'm gonna be stopping frequently after I think it's a quart and remeasure it up. Going a little over or a little under is not horrendous. But it takes 6 quarts because the first half a quart that get pumps through the motor goes into your oil filter. So realistically, the engine by itself only holds about 5.5 quarts. That is not true for every car though. Alright, and that should be about a quart. Measure it up. Right on the money. Man, I hate being professional. You know what the best part about having a lifted truck is? Your shelves are really close. Yeah.
Case in point.
Now you're going to take your oil cap, and you're just going to stick that back on. And then you take your oil stick, and you push it right back into its housing. Let the vehicle sit for a minute just to make sure that all the oil from the top end of the motor has reached all the way down into the oil pan. Usually give it about 15 to 20 seconds, especially with all the oil that you've used. And what it's going to do is it's actually going to work all the way into the oil pan. And then when you start going through and you start the truck, what it's going to do is it's going to circulate everything to make sure the oil filter's filled and everything else. You always start the truck before you check your oil dipstick. Just like your truck always has to be on a leveled surface in order to get an accurate reading. So now that we've let this sit for a few minutes or a few seconds, I'm going to go in, I'm going to start the truck. You don't have to let it run real long. While it's running for the 30 seconds to a minute, you always check underneath to make sure you're not blowing any oil out from underneath, to make sure everything has been sealed and retightened. And then as long as everything's sealed up, you shut the truck off, you come out, you check to make sure that your oil is right where it needs to be. If you need a little bit more, you can always top it off. Action. So what we're going to do is just going to peek underneath. That little bit of oil on the floor there is nothing to be concerned about. That's just remnants from actually doing the job itself. Again, it's nothing too crazy. What we're looking for is active leaking or spraying of any sorts where it's coming down almost like a stream. In this case, it's not doing that, so it's nothing to be entirely too concerned about. So at this point, we're going to get up. I'm going to shut the truck back off, and we're going to double check the oil level and make sure that's all good. I miss this truck.
Just in case if you guys have missed what he just said, if you guys seen the spots on the floor, they're nothing to be concerned about. That's from just doing the job. If you've seen anything active, dropping, or spilling, or splashing, or spritzing all over the place, then that's something to be concerned about. I just wanted to re-elaborate due to the loud noise of the exhaust and the echo in the garage so that you guys get a better understanding and hearing of what he just said. Now we're going to show you the dipstick and confirm the proper level.
All right, kids. So this is where a rag would definitely come in handy. So again, I have this very special piece of equipment. It's called a stool for us short people with tall trucks. By the way, I'm not that short, under 6 foot, for the record, and this truck makes me look tiny. So what I'm gonna—
Case in point.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull out the dipstick. Number 1 rule, anytime your vehicle has been started, you never check the first reading. Because with that, with the pump and everything going and with it splashing internally inside the motor, it will never be accurate. So what you do is you always wipe it off and you stick it right back into the home it came from. Second one you can pull out right away, no big deal. And then we'll check our oil level, which in this case, we're actually almost a quart off. So we can top it off real quick, which is pretty much gonna be the vast majority of that jug, and it should be right where it should be. That is exactly why it's important to check your oil level when you're done doing the jug. I can't tell you how many times I have had cars come in and literally have blown up motors, brand new cars, because when they came in to get inspected out of the dealership, they did not check the oil level, and therefore, in return, has pretty much canceled it. It's blown up the motor, it's locked it up, and it's died. So this is why anytime you ever do an oil change, you always double check your dipstick. Now let's see if I can do this again, preferably without dumping it all over.
Round 3. Fight.
No joke.
Which this part isn't really that important because we're just topping it off. We don't really need to see it, but you know, round 3.
And there she goes. That was quite easy and quite simple. I actually didn't splash any that time. See, practice makes perfect, kids. Remember that. The more times you change your oil, the more your parents will like you. So I'm going to put the cap back on, make sure everything's good to go. Now, because we already had it running once to get all the oil circulated, you do not have to start it again. It's not really going to benefit you any. So at this point, you can go right back to checking the oil level. Now, in this case, it's actually right up to where it should be, up here. So at this point, that's actually a good oil level. You can put the dipstick back in. See if it gets in the hole. There we go. You'd think with me having a kid, this would be the easy part.
I mean, I can't say the same.
And now that it's all done, you'll actually be able to drop the hood, and some places they will, like a shop or something like that, will actually have maintenance oil lubrication stickers to throw in the window. Me personally, I like to actually pull one of the flaps off on the oil filters themselves and write down what mileage it needs to be done at, which for me, I am religious on 3,000 miles or 3 months, regardless if it's full synthetic or not. I've never had an issue doing that, and my engine has always looked really good when I was done with it. So that's my recommendation, but I appreciate it, guys. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any comments, please feel free to let me know. Definitely watching, liking the video would actually be a really tremendous help, and at least if you don't do it for me, do it for the new addition for the house. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you guys watching. By the way, guys, just wanted to add this little part to it too. So a lot of people like use like Gojo and some stuff like that when you're done working on a car because it with the grease and everything. I've actually found out this stuff is absolutely incredible. I've actually seen this stuff outperform like the typical orange Gojo and stuff like that, especially a lot of the generic stuff. So I would definitely recommend picking up some of that, or it's another hand grit hand soap. It's I believe it's called Cherry Bomb. I believe Walmart and stuff sells it. That stuff works really well too, but honestly, that's about all I use. So just wanted to throw that little snippet in there for you. It's just hey, just letting you know. But again, thanks guys for watching. Please feel free to to leave a comment and a thumbs up. Thank you guys again. Thank you.